Welcome, everybody, to Crossing the Line with Greg Heym. Thanks, Ray. I appreciate that. It's great to be here, as always. And this week we have Lisa Rae Castrigno.
Good morning.
Senior Vice President of Research, who has the unprecedented privilege of working for me, right?
Sure, we'll run with that.
Well, the good thing about having Lisa on is we do pick up one more viewer, because that means Lucy will be watching.
Watches. There you go.
So, hello, Mrs. Castrigno. Tell friends. Well, make sure your friends have iPads or computers, and then tell them, because, we need the views.
Okay, I'll tell her.
So you excited to be on the show this week?
Yes.
The lone daddy, couldn't be here?
Yes.
Okay.
It's nice to be back.
One of these days we all have to get funny nicknames. You can be like Money Mama, something like that. I don't know. We'll have to work on this stuff. We'll put more.
Well, my grandfather did say I had more money than God, so I don't know. Money Mama may work.
But what does God need money for anyway?
Well,
It's God, right?
Yeah.
Or she's God, whatever. Okay. Well, did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, stayed around the house, cleaned errands. That's the excitement I had.
That doesn't sound very fun. Well, I'll tell you what you weren't doing was going to my gig. None of yous were. I didn't see any of yous there. It's all right. I'll get over it. It's okay. It rained really hard on Saturday. So
I know. I made it in the house like 15 minutes later, and the skies literally opened.
Luckily, my landscaper seeded my lawn, so that should help those seeds grow.
Yes, a lot.
Well, let's hope we get something good out of it. All right. Well, as always, we're here in beautiful Studio 1873, conveniently located right outside my office. Before we get into it, let's take this break for these commercial messages.
Your dream home is closer than you think. I'm Scott Nadler, VP of Mortgage Lending at CrossCountry Mortgage, and I'm here to get you the perfect loan to match your perfect home. From first-time home buyers to seasoned homeowners, I've helped clients make their moves with confidence. Ready for a smooth, stress-free home buying experience? Let's get you moving today. Call me and let's turn those dreams into keys.
All right, and we're back. All right, so we'll start with our line items. We used to do that, and then we got away from calling them the line items. The line is the blog.
Right, that comes out every Friday.
Where we recently celebrate, well, most Fridays. Some Fridays I just can't. But we a couple of weeks ago was the 250th issue. We should have got a party for that.
Yeah.
Who knew that I
didn't even realize it had been that many until you told me.
Well, it started during the pandemic.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So, all right, so what was in the line? I've already forgotten.
You've already forgotten. You wrote it. It was all about housing.
Well, it's write it, forget about it, move on to the next report. That's
okay.
Kind of the way it works.
So it was all housing.
Right. So last week was a busy week for housing because we got existing and new home sales. So we'll go over that, and kind of say what's happening because.
It was interesting because one was up, one was down. So.
Right, but there are reasons, and,
Yes.
and so existing home sales were down almost 6% in March. It was the worst March since 2009. Seems like you're stretching a little bit for a headline when you have to say that, but it shouldn't have been surprised for two reasons that sales were down. A lot of these contracts, because this is based on closings, were probably signed at the beginning of the year. Rates had gone up then, and that may have kept people from buying. And the other thing is February's existing home sales were much higher than expected. So when you have a much higher than expected number the month before, you got to expect some give back. And again, inventory is up.
Yes.
20%.
I would say quite a bit, yeah.
But it's still just a 4-month supply. So basically what you do is if you have 100 homes for sale and you're selling 10 a month, that's a 10-month supply. In this case, it's a 4-month supply. Anything under 5 is considered a seller's market. So
right, well, we talked about that once before, about the number. And remember it said the bigger the number, it's for the buyer, and the smaller the number, it benefits the seller.
No, I don't remember you saying that. This is 63 episodes. I don't remember what I said, and that's what's really important.
I love that because it's a great way for someone to take that number and kind of make sense out of it.
Okay, well, whatever you.
It helps me. It helps me every month when I do our inventory report and to figure out what to write and know where we are.
Okay, so. whatever works for you.
Well, I like my little. I forget what they're called.
Lisa-isms? I don't know. We'll get creative working on that.
Okay.
So again, with existing home sales, it's all about affordability. Inventory is still very low. That means prices are still up, which they are almost 3% year over year.
Yeah.
And the supply is up, but it's not up enough. So this is the challenge for buyers out there. Rates are up, prices are up, inventory's up, but not enough to cancel out those other increases. So affordability is still the major problem here. A couple other things of interest. 26% of the closings in March were cash, as Sebastian Maniscalco would say, down from 32% the prior month. I don't know if that's a trend, probably not. And first-time buyers are about a third of all sales. So,
which is nice. It's good to see people jumping in.
Nice. We'll take all the buyers we can get. Yeah. First time, second time, third time, doesn't matter.
No, but once you jump into the market the first time, the first go around, now you have that equity.
You become addicted and you start collecting homes?
Yeah, sure. But you start building some equity. So now your comfort level to, increase the size of your home or the location based on then your family changes or family needs. So you're there. You're in the market.
Okay. Well, or you just renovate your home, right?
Okay, don't pick up my renovation that's still ongoing.
Pointing it out.
Listen, we got a much better renovation story coming up later.
Okay. So, yeah, that'll be fun. Stay tuned for because I'm going to go out of my mind at the end of the episode. I didn't want to do it too early because,
No.
So, all right, so that's existing home sales. Again, those are counted when the sales close. New home sales, which also came out last week, are counted when contracts are signed. And the reason for that is I could sign a contract now, my home might not be ready for a year or two. So you look at it as a more real-time indicator. Existing home sales are the past. This is sort of the present. And inventory is kind of the future. So there you go. There's your time lesson.
Okay.
I'm not Stephen Hawking, but I do what I can. So new home sales up 7.4% last month. Blew away the Roy. So the way they measure these is in terms of annual units, right? The pace of annual sales. So the annual rate jumped to 724,000. That was much higher than the 680,000
they were expecting.
Economists were looking for, in the highest level since September of last year. So why the disconnect? Well, let's look at some of the facts, as Sergeant Friday would say. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning a lot, and Dragnet is on. So,
okay.
First of all, I don't know how Jack Webb ever became an actor. He's the most boring guy in the world, but I guess that fit for that character. Okay. But
I actually never watched the show.
You should, because they're actual stories. They're from the names are changed to protect the innocent. It has one of the coolest theme songs ever. All right, but getting back to new home sales, the average price, median price was a little over $400,000, and that was down 2% from the prior month and 7.5% from a year ago.
Yeah, which is a pretty
the difference here, price is falling for new homes. Current pace of sales, the supply, it actually fell to 8.3 months, but that's still indicating a buyer's market, pretty strong one. And that's double the supply of existing homes. And, we started to see mortgage rates start to decline in the month or so leading up to this data, right, which could have helped as well. But the bottom line is, why are new home sales up when existing home sales are down? I could say it's a timing thing.
Right, because it does feel like a disconnect.
But it's really about the fact that the supply is twice as big of new home sales to existing home sales. Prices tend to be higher because they're new, but they're falling. So more inventory leads to falling prices, which will draw more buyers in. People that can't find an existing home will look for a new home. Now, Lisa won't do that because then she'll have nothing to renovate. No. You can still renovate a new home. It would
having the time to get into that new home can also certainly help people in the purchase and getting into a home. Because if you're signing a contract, you're only putting X number of dollars down. If you don't close for a year, you have an entire year to save additional money.
Well, you should have the money saved before you make the commitment, but...
No, but I mean past the full down payment, but saving money for just life. So it gives you an extra year to do whatever.
Well, or in some parts of the country, they build them in the span of a couple of months.
Right, and then you're in. But it's still, sometimes you're buying it's a huge commitment, right? So you're putting a lot of money into it, and you're making this big purchase, and then you panic. You're like, oh my God, do I have enough then for furniture? Do I have enough for the moving costs, everything else? If you have a little breathing room of several months to possibly a year, you kind of feel like, all right, calm down. I can afford the furniture because I can save for it.
Yeah, I excellent point. There you go.
Thank you, Ray.
So to finish up our trifecta of housing stuff, mortgage rates did dip a little bit. I mean, they're still sitting at about 6.8, which is higher than people would want, but still about 1% lower than the historical average.
I was going to say, we were just talking about the historical average before.
Yeah, well, the confusing thing is here, the stock market has been incredibly volatile. By the way, again, this is a tariff-free episode. We're not going to address tariff mania.
You can't say that T word.
No, because it just never ends. And things change. If we prepared something to say about it, it would be changing right now while we're talking about it. But when the stock market gets that volatile and people get pessimistic about the future, both of which are happening, you would expect mortgage rates to go down. That would bring it to, and the exact opposite has been happening, which is, I guess we shouldn't be surprised because what's normal these days, other than, New York teams not winning.
Whoa. Best record in baseball.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Spoken like a true Met fan, it's not about April.
Since you have, your Ron Guidry here every week.
That's right. Well, and we're very excited, again, to have the Rick Pitino here, especially since they had a phenomenal experience with transfers. And I think the preseason ranking is now 3 for St. John's.
Oh, exciting. One day I'm going to come in with some of my bobbleheads. Put them out
that's
here.
Not going to happen. If
I'll never get invited back. It'll be like the last episode, that I get to.
What are you going to get? Like your Juan Soto bobblehead? Ron Guidry today could strike him out. Come on, let's go. Gator's probably in the 70s, and he could probably still bring it.
It's okay. We still have polar bear squirrels back, so we're doing all right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Alonso, he's playing for a big contract.
I'm fine with that.
So am I. I'm looking for a big contract. When is my contract up, Ray? When do we renew?
Anytime.
Okay, that's good. I guess the best thing, and Freddie Mac's chief economist said this, is that rates have been in sort of a more narrow range. And I know Scott Nadler says this when this is on the show.
Yeah, he's mentioned
that provides a little bit of comfort that it's not
you don't feel
jumping
like
around
there's
like
going to
stocks
be
are.
that wild swing, like the buyer's remorse, right? So you lock in, and the next thing you know, it's like down a point like 2 days later, and you're like, crap.
Well, don't worry.
What do I do?
A lot of these mortgage programs offer like free float downs.
Right. But I'm just saying is that, it's like anything else. It's like you go to the store and you buy something and you find out, 2 days later that it's 50% off and you can't adjust the price. And you're like, what?
You can always adjust.
So
it's like the guitar I just bought before I walked in here.
No, but some level of stability where it's not going up or down in any kind of wild, crazy swing makes you feel like I can kind of...
You don't feel rushed.
Right, but you also feel like you can then at least estimate realistically what the payments are.
Well, I think the other mistake people make, and Scott talks about this a lot, is, they'll hear the rate went up, but they don't see what the practical implication of that is. They just focus that the rate went up instead of looking at, well, what does that do to my payment? And then you realize it may hardly matter at that point. So that's almost the latest on housing. We're going to start the next segment with this isn't about prices or how sales are doing. I won't tell you any more until we return from this commercial break.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. As an official moving partner of Brown Harris Stevens, we know that your clients deserve more than just a move. At Roadway Moving and Storage, we turn moving into an experience they will love. From specialized services to a white glove treatment, we've got it all covered. When you choose Roadway, you're choosing a peace of mind for your clients. Plus, our referral program is the most rewarding in the industry. Want to learn more? Shoot me an email at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
All right, and we're back. So we have one more housing thing that is interesting. Realtor.com has come out with this report card for home building and affordability.
This was interesting.
Interesting, but not interesting. How could something be both? Oh, I'm going to tell you.
But we didn't ask that question, Mr. Heym.
Well, I guess you folks listening or watching, what areas do you think of when you think about home building and affordability? And for most people, even if you don't track the data, if you visit the South and Midwest, there's a lot of construction going on there.
Well, states with more space.
Texas in particular, I'm there a lot. I was just there a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
New homes being built all over the place. So the number one, and there's only one state that got an A grade. No A pluses.
No.
I have too high a standard probably. But only one state got an A grade, and it was South Carolina. So,
So why'd they
congratulations. Well, so there's affordability and home building, right? So for affordability, they have something called the Realtor's Affordability Score. And they also look at the share of median income it takes to make payments on a median priced home. So, well, what can, think of it as average. Median is basically cutting the mark in the middle, but you got to pick some way to look at it and saying, well, if you're making the median wages, could you afford the median price home in an area?
Right,
Obviously,
makes sense.
In other parts of the country, that's not the case, but good for South Carolina. Home building activity, which is the other half, is based on building permits per capita and the new construction premium. So the premium new construction is the difference between the average price of a new home and an existing home. There were 7 F grades handed out.
Yes,
and yes, we're going to name those states because they got to get with it. Oregon, Connecticut, California, Hawaii, New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, all in the west or northeast. Rhode Island was last on the list. How did the Griffins live there on Family Guy? I mean, Quahog's not a great place to live.
Well, I think
He's got a bigger house than I do, and the guy never seems to have a real job.
I think in the article, one of the issues and this goes, I think, across the board, is that in some of the states being smaller states, but it was all about the land and what's available to be able to build on in the first place.
And regulations. A lot of these, there's a lot of zoning rules. There's processes that go on to assemble. Like obviously here in Manhattan, it's very hard to build, to assemble lots to do that,
right,
to deal with the zoning issues, community board objections, all of that stuff. I think the one thing that we can say is that we need more affordable housing anywhere we can put it, because it's become a lot more difficult, particularly in the larger cities, to accommodate everybody.
Right.
So
because I think in the article, if correct me if I got the number wrong, I think they said the gap was about 4 million homes.
Well, yeah, they've been saying that for a while. That is the.
But it makes me curious, where do they get that number, or how do they even come up with that estimate? Where does that come from? Because I don't remember reading that in the article. I just remember reading the number.
Well, I think you can look at how many, obviously what the population is, or the number of households,
okay,
and then see if you have enough housing units to accommodate that. Obviously, with immigration ramping up dramatically the last couple of years, that creates an issue also. But it's funny, years ago, somebody was telling me they were working on a paper that was going to try to answer the question, are we adequately housing the affluent? And I thought this was crazy. I'm like,
okay,
where rich people don't have a place to live. But then you see, like here in New York, the sales and how quickly the high-end product gets gobbled up in some cases. And it's an issue. It may seem crazy to think about rich people who have multiple homes everywhere, that we have to build housing for them, but there's demand for that also.
Right.
Speaking of rich people, this is something that was really interesting. So last year, $1 trillion of wealth was created for just the 19 richest households.
I know, crazy.
Mine wasn't one of them. Were you on the list?
No.
Anybody on that? No, we're not.
No.
I don't think so.
I wish.
These are people
wish.
named like, Bezos and Gates and the such. So that 1 trillion wealth increase is larger than the size of Switzerland's economy.
Which are
See, chocolate and watches aren't as valuable as they used to be.
Well, I like the chocolate.
So in case you were wondering, that works out to a little less than $53 billion per family. So hopefully they can live off of that.
I don't know. Like back to that, the Friends paper about housing them, it could be a problem.
Well, if someone put an extra $53 billion in my pocket last
I'd have
year,
a tough time trying to figure out
I
where
might have
all
bought a place or two.
my homes might be. Yeah, but then when you have all that money, how do you pick where to go? Like outside of Italy, of course, then where else do I buy? See,
You gotta buy
this is
American.
hard. This is hard.
I
Right?
mean,
This is why somebody needed to write that paper. It's complicated stuff.
well, look at it this way. 99.999% of us are never going to have that problem to deal with. So don't worry about it. But don't worry, the number of billionaires is sitting just under 2,000.
Yeah,
now,
that went up also.
up from 1,421. So it's growing.
That's a pretty good.
I checked the list. I'm not on it.
Yeah, me either.
We got to get somebody to sponsor this show for $1 billion. Then we can all be billionaires.
Yay.
Yes.
Works for me.
And do this from the terrace of our penthouse apartment somewhere in the park.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? All right. We will get to our next segment after this last, I promise, this last break.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
All right, and we're back. Hopefully I said that exciting enough.
Oh, yes.
So this is very pertinent today because of what's gone on in the stock market. Americans are actually now more worried about running out of money in retirement than dying.
I know. Crazy.
Well,
See, I thought you were just going to make a dig at my age, but okay.
No. After your birthday, I'll do it. But 64% of Americans are worrying more about running out of money than they do about dying. I guess you got to have money to live, so, you know.
It's helpful.
So, when asked why, they talk about high inflation. Of course, inflation's been high for the last 3 years. And the concern about Social Security, not providing enough benefits.
And I don't blame people on that. They've been talking for years about Social Security running out of money, and now with the birth rates going down, it's a concern of who's going to fund it.
that the baby boomers were funding the surplus in Social Security, which the government, of course, spent because that's what they do. And now, with fewer babies being born, who's going to fund my retirement?
Right. Well, your son, he'll be out of college.
I guess we'll be doing this show a while, right? So, and so the question is, well, how can we calm these people down? And the article talks about that. And look, not all this is practical for everybody.
No, but it had some very good advice.
One of them is waiting as long as possible to take Social Security. Obviously, the earlier you take it, the less you get. Some people may say, well, I didn't have a choice, and I can understand that.
One nice thing now is that the statements are available. I get mine every summer. I download it. So you can see it 62, 65,
right.
60. No, our retirement age is 67. So it's 62, 67, and then I think 70.
Gee, who's old now? She's thinking about all this stuff, right?
No, but I do. I download it every year because, one, you're just always curious. But for me, I'm fortunate, financial planning. I have a financial advisor. I give that information to him, and I work with him to help me so I don't have as much worry.
Another option you have, since unlike the old days, nobody gets pensions anymore. They're incredibly rare. You could buy an annuity, which would guarantee you, an income. And again, yes, working with a professional can be helpful. I always say investing's like exercise. You can go to a gym and do anything, and it's healthy for you. But if you want to make sure you're working out effectively, you may want to hire somebody to help you along with that. Financial planners. When you think about it, outside of your health and your relationships, money's the most important thing typically.
Well, it does take a load off because for all the big purchases and stuff that I've done, I've always had a quick conversation so that I'm in the right direction.
Okay. Well, that's always a good direction to be on, the right one, because the wrong one's not good.
Well, when you're, especially, again, circling back to our housing, it is one of the biggest purchases you'll ever make in your life, especially if you're not wealthy people. They buy many homes, but for the rest of us, it's the biggest thing you buy. You want to feel like comfort and confidence in your choices, decisions, and that you're not doing anything.
Well, I think it's also important. A lot of people say, well, I don't fully fund my 401k plan, or I don't save regularly for time, but I have a home. And the problem is the home, you either have to sell it or mortgage it to get money out of it. And that can be a problem.
Well, again, this is where I'm very fortunate. My financial advisor, one of the things that we always talk about is making sure that I'm putting as much into my 401k that I possibly can.
And now we're old enough for catch-up contributions.
I know.
Isn't that great?
Listen, for someone who hasn't always had the opportunity to max out, say, their entire career, jumping in with the catch-up has been nice. It's very helpful. I jumped on that.
Well, so I have some personal things that I like to point out when it comes to this, because some of this I've read, some of this I've just seen happen to friends of mine.
Yeah.
And I
Lived
think
experience.
these are some mistakes that people make. Number one, they think they can pick when they retire. You know, I hear
We were
people say
just
all the time,
talking
I'm
about
going to
this.
work till I'm 60. I'm going to do this. Just like an athlete who's typically told when they're not playing anymore, a lot of us are told, no, you're going to retire now.
It's like office space. You know, you eventually end up in the basement. You should get, they stop paying right? You stop getting the paycheck.
Trying to hold on to your swing line stapler. Yes. But don't think that you're ultimately the one who decides when you're going to stop, working. That a lot of times that decision is made for you. Another
Right.
one, I read an article about this a couple of years ago. Another mistake people make is underestimating how long they're going to live. In case you're wondering, the average lifespan is 77 and a half years. But the disparity between
Right.
men and women is scary. Women, it's 80 years. Men, it's 75.
Good.
I can make
And we know how
plenty
to
of jokes.
we get rid of you and
being
then
married
spend
the
your-
last 27 years.
And spend your money.
But
Then we really go to town. We crimp and save, and then once you're out of the picture, it's off to the races.
Is my wife just keeping me alive until it's
long enough.
It's more financially sound for me to not be?
Yeah.
I'm just posing the question. I'm not going to answer
As you get
it.
a little older, just make sure, start sleeping one eye
Right now,
open
Joanne's
and-
screaming into the screen. Yes, yes. And this one is really relevant to today. I see a lot of people on social media that are retired complaining that their 401ks or their investment accounts are plummeting. Asset allocation, financial planner can help, or just
Yes.
Google it. There's plenty that's been written on the subject that's
Oh, for
easily
sure.
digestible. If
For
you're
sure.
in your retirement years, you probably shouldn't be invested in anything risky, but that's up to you and your risk tolerance.
Right.
Because, for us whippersnappers, we could say, well, it'll come back. We have plenty of time. We're not touching it for X amount of years. But when you're actively drawing from those accounts,
Right.
you
It
don't want to
matters.
lock in a 20 or 30% loss because you got a little greedy maybe or didn't want to address your asset allocation. So always be careful. You worked hard for that money.
Right.
Preserve it. All right. Now's when I'm going to really get mad. So on this show, I've bashed the Fed every which way I could without calling them just outright names because of how they bungled the inflation that we're still paying for.
Yeah. In so many ways.
But now they're doing something maybe even more egregious or more likely to really tick me off. And again, just when I thought I'd run out of things to criticize them, what did we find out that even though this was approved 4 years ago?
Yes, a renovation, a very nice, fancy.
Yeah.
You talk about my basement. This makes my basement look like a
So-
one-room shack
You're the Federal Reserve, supposed to be the gatekeepers of
of
inflation.
money, and yeah.
and not wildly print it, and then you increase the money supply by 40%, and you tell everybody inflation is going to be transitory when, you allegedly are the most smart economists out there, and you completely bungle that and give us inflation that peaked at 9% annually and is still above your target and will be for the next 2 years minimum. You're going to spend $2.5 billion renovating your headquarters because you deserve that.
Of course.
Congratulations, Fed. I hope you love it.
Yes,
Can I
but-
come visit?
But talk about all the fancy stuff that they're getting. So
Well-
at least they're spending the money in a
Let's
fabulous.
just point out some other things with the Fed. Okay, not only did they really mess up and tell people inflation was transitory, don't worry about it. Like nothing to see here is like inflation is running rampant. They haven't made a profit since 2022. The Fed goes out there and buys treasuries, sells treasuries, and had only made money until 2023
Shocking.
when they lost $115 billion of our money.
And now they want to spend another $2.5 billion of our money.
And then last year they lost $78 billion. So they're getting better. I don't know. The problem is, they pay interest on certain things and their income comes from the bonds that they own. And like we saw with Silicon Valley Bank and some, there's this duration issue where you buy long-term bonds to get a slightly higher rate, or in the Fed's case, to maybe get the economy going, throwing money out there. Your income is getting a much lower rate of interest than what you're paying out. And that's been the problem. But again, they were the ones that had to raise rates because they're the ones that let it all get out of control in the first place. So this economist, Professor Andrew Levin, a professor of economics at Dartmouth, has sounded the alarm on this, saying, quote, "The Federal Reserve is building the Palace of Versailles on the National Mall." And it's like, well, how, it's a bunch of economists. How nice does this have to be, right? These government buildings are usually
And Versailles
nice.
is beautiful.
Well,
just saying from personal
never
experience.
been, but
it's really pretty.
Now I don't have to go there to see it. I can just go to Washington, D.C. and see it.
Go. And that's your own money, too.
So just like any other government capital project, costs have ballooned
Of course.
32% just since the 2019 estimate of this. But don't worry, the work will be done by 2027. So just the time they get to their inflation target, they can have parties in their nice new place. How nice is it? Well, the plans include a rooftop garden terraces. Yeah. Maybe they'll think better if they get some fresh air. I don't know, or get a suntan. Skylights. Do we have skylights here? No, you can't because we're not on the top floor.
We're on 10.
Yes. Ornate water features.
And if we have a skylight, we have a problem.
Water features? Do we have water features here?
Yeah, they're.
We have a water cooler, but we don't.
There you go. That's a feature.
And
a sink.
Of course, every building needs this, a new elevator system that allows board members to be dropped off directly to their VIP dining suite.
Well,
so I'm an allegedly an executive around here. I don't know where the dining suite is. I didn't get the key to the executive washroom.
No.
But
or to the dining room.
The Fed's got to have what they got to have. Now, are they going to feel obliged to deliver better results? That they're going to get this nice new space?
I don't know. A nice meal might help you.
When I buy my son a nice gift, I tell him I expect higher grades now, and I want your bed made. What are we demanding of the Fed for them to build this $2.5 billion, do this $2.5 billion renovation? It's not even building it's a renovation.
It's insane.
You want to talk about the worst time for something like this to come out?
Probably.
Well, maybe it would have been in 2022 when inflation was at 9%. But I think for me, it's just, they just keep, what's that line, Michael Cohen, The Godfather, every time I want out, they drag me back in. Anytime I just want to forget about the Fed, they do something that aggravates me. And right now they're doing nothing, by the way.
Well, we'll call them and tell them to please stop aggravating you.
Well, they've basically said, look, we're on vacation until the tariff situation is kind of worked out. So we're just going to, go look at the plans and make our offices bigger. Inflation. Everything's going up, even the size of their offices. So we're going to send somebody down there to take photos of this thing so we can see it when it's built. Lena, you can take care of that, right?
Yeah, I'll go check it out.
Yeah,
well, we should be able to go in because after all, it's my tax dollars, right? So I should be able to go use my terrace, my money. I paid for it.
My dining suite.
You know what? They should pay for it out of the profits they earn. Oh, wait, no, they're losing money every year. All right, see? And this is... Aren't you glad I wasn't this angry the entire podcast? It would have been probably a little more interesting.
Yes.
But we save the anger, save the hate for last, and, you don't seem so crazy. All right.
No.
Anybody got any closing comments they want to say about this? Lena, now, you probably weren't very fond of economists to begin with, but when you find out they're spending $2.5 billion to have ornate water features and special elevators to take them to their dining room so they don't have to mingle with the unwashed. How does that make you feel?
Angry.
Exactly.
I want a dining suite.
I mean...
Well, I have like a dining room in my house. It's got a nice table in it.
I mean, most of us do, but we don't have special elevators to get there, and we don't have a separate dining room for just the beautiful people.
Well, I have beautiful people. I have my whole family over for
there's a
dinner.
very handsome family, for sure. Hey, Castrignos.
And I fed them, and they keep coming back.
Well,
maybe
the
that's,
price is right.
Maybe that's why they need all of this stuff, because otherwise, will they come back with the mess that they've made of everything? Will they keep showing up unless they give them a fancy dining room to go eat in?
Look, these are problems for a whole other podcast, okay? we're going to end this here because we're always trying to stick to 30 minutes. We never get there. I think we're kind of about that time. So thanks, Lisa Rae.
My pleasure.
For sitting in that chair this week. Say hi to the family, and thanks to Ray and Lena. But more importantly, thank you to everybody supporting the show. We really do appreciate it. Again, if you have any comments, ctl@bhsusa.com. That's ctl@bhsusa.com. And have a great week, and hopefully a tariff-free week.
Oh, we'll see.
And we'll see you next week on Crossing the Line.